Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Welcome, everybody. Turn to your neighbors. Make sure you know everybody around you. Wish everybody Shabbat Shalom. And wave if we need to. And we're sorry about the weather, but hopefully next week, our last outdoor Shabbat, we can be outdoors. The good thing that comes is that anybody who is paying attention to the weather can stream. So. Including the Charlotte contingent. So we begin on page 6. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. And I forgot to mention that it is an Ask the Rabbi night. So when we get to that point in the service, if anybody has any burning questions, I will try to answer them. No math or science, please. And we will continue at the bottom of page 10, singing Shabbat HaMalka. To page 20 and 21 as we welcome in the Shabbat Kala, the Shabbat bride, with the singing of the Chadodi. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. When we come to the last verse, we'll rise and face the open door to welcome in Shabbat. 26. Page 30. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv arabim, v'chochma poteach she'arim, uvitvuna mishaneh itim, umachalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or, Uma'avir yom umevi laila, umabdil ben yom uvein laila, Adonai tzevaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yemloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Page 32. Please be seated.
Yavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'vlechtecha v'aderech, u'shochtecha u'vkumecha, u'kshartam leot ayadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, Uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzotai v'hitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem Me'eretz Mitzrayim, Li'ot lachem Elohim, Ani Adonai Elohechem emet.
Page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. El?
Lipson?
That comes later. Michamocha. Neil Lipson.
I'm
There we
already
go.
on the boat.
That's all right. You're way ahead of us. You're way ahead of us.
I'm getting on a boat.
There we go. Amen. Page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will.
Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom aleinu v'yapol amo Yisrael v'yal Yerushalayim.
Amen. Now we
Now we have
continue with
Vishamru.
Vishamru on page 44.
Sorry.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, לדורותם בריתו
rise for tefillah on page 46.
Adonai, sifatai tifta, ufia gitehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avoteinu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei hakol, V'zocher chasdei avot v'imahot, U'mevii geula libnei bneihem, Le'man shelo b'yama, Melech ozer, Moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Yezrat Sarah. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מחבר חיים בחסד, בחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, זומר נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו בשני עפר, מלחמוך בגבורת ומטעם מהלך, מלך מביט ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. Baruch atah Adonai, b'chayei hametim. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יעלו כסלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש.
Please be seated. Middle of page 54. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, retzei v'imnuchatenu.
Adishenu b'mitzotecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, v'sabeinu mitovecha. Kadishenu b'mitzotecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, v'sabeinu mitovecha. Sabeinu, sabeinu mitovecha, v'samcheinu, v'samcheinu, v'samcheinu b'shuatecha.
Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, v'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha. 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 56. Ritzei Adonai Eloheinu, be'amcha Yisrael, utefilatam be'ahava tekabel, utehi l'ratzon tamid avodat Yisrael amecha, el karov lechol korav, panei el avadecha v'chonenu, shafoch ruchacha aleinu, v'techazena einenu b'shuvcha le'tzion berachamim, baruch ata Adonai, hamachazir shechinato le'tzion. Page 59. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we give thanks.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch Shemo.
Aton Shimcha Uchana Lahodo.
Amen. We continue on page 60 with Shalom Rav, our prayer for peace.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amocha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amocha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol Shalom.
Ki atahu melech Adon lechol ha'shalom.
Mitom beinecha levarech et amocha Yisrael mechol et v'choshav bishlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom.
We take a few moments now to pray or meditate in silence. Our Misha Berach for healing is on page 253.
Hey
Sheberach avotenu ve'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak ve'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel ve'Leah. Hu yivarech et hacholim. We ask God's blessing upon those we love who are in need of healing. If anyone here or at home has the name of a loved one for whom our healing prayer might bring comfort, please share their name aloud. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleihem Lahachalimam Ulerapotam Ulahachazikam Vayishlach Lehem Mehera Refuah Shleima Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Urefuat HaGuf Hashta Be'agala Uvisman Kariv V'nomar Amen. Yishe Be'erach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Bless those in need of healing with refuah shleima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Okay, as I said, it's an Ask the Rabbi night. I have a few questions previously sent in that I can share, although George, if you want to share yours in person, you certainly can. Elaine Sack of Temple Heart Zion asked about congregations updating pronouns, and we've heard a lot about this in the LGBTQ community and people who are transgender and people who find themselves sort of feeling in between genders and choosing different pronouns. And the question was about whether we're rewording honor your father and your mother, the fifth commandment of the 10 of the 613. And I guess I would say this in a more general way. I struggle with this a little bit. I'm still trying to get used to it. I think I'm a little old is the problem. But I was just at camp for 9 days, and it's amazing how many people have different pronouns now that I struggle to get used to. But certainly we know, even before pronouns have changed, that not everybody is in a house with a mother and a father, right? Obviously, some are with single parents, some have two moms, some have two dads. And I think, were we to use the passages liturgically, we'd sooner teach honor your parents, whoever they are. Obviously, if we're reading them in the Torah, we're going to read kaved et avicha ve'et imecha. Honor your father and your mother, understanding that we are all parented by different people, and so sometimes we need to update language to reflect that and to make people feel included. So I'm going to leave it at that. George, did you want to share your question aloud, or shall I? Okay, so George asked, and I had to look this one up, about the Reform opinion regarding the lose bone. Now, I didn't know what the lose bone was, so I looked it up. I'm not a Kabbalist. So the lose bone, according to Kabbalah, Jewish mystical tradition, is this idea that the soul, the soul of a person is seated in the lose bone, which the rabbis identify as your C1 vertebrae. That's the top, right? The top one, isn't that right? Which connects right to your head and your brain, so you can understand that. And that when the Messianic age comes, according to tradition, and the bodies are resurrected, that resurrection begins from building from that lose bone. Okay? Now, here's what our Reform movement would say, and I've thought this a little more through, George, since you asked and I answered the other day. So first off, we Reform Jews, many of us, reject the notion of bodily resurrection. I do, and that will relate to Karen's question in a minute. And still believe, however, some of us, that the soul is a separate part of us. It is immortal. It lives on with God, but that I don't need my body back. Thank you very much. When the Messianic age comes. First of all, would it be this age? Would it be, would it still be chubby? Would I still have diabetes? Would I not have to have it anymore? It gets really strange. And then when you think about that, whatever you come back to, do you age more? Do you have to stay that way forever? You can see the problems, right? Bodies are bodies, and we don't need them after we're gone, but our souls may live on. So from that aspect, George, I would say I'm not a believer in bodily resurrection anyway. Also, since our movement has always been based on accepting the findings of science, there doesn't seem to be scientific evidence that I know of that whatever our soul is resides in one particular vertebrae. So we would probably reject the notion. However, I did think this a little more. The idea that the rabbis had that our soul is kind of an entity within inside of us that is the essence of who we are certainly starts about here and goes up. And that the idea that it is housed somewhere is certainly an understandable idea from the rabbis, who didn't know as much science as we do, but they had an insight that that part of who we are was something important and something to be protected. And so that's how I would answer. If science has got other ideas, I'd love to read the articles. I know that there has been science about the notion of the soul and whether it weighs something. What was that movie? 7 ounces or something? 21 ounces? It was the 7 pounds, that people lose a certain amount of weight when they die and that's their soul. I don't know if that's real, but so thank you for illuminating me on the lose bone. I had to do a little deep dive this week for that. Thank you, George. And speaking of which, Karen asks about the difference in the text that we read for Gevurot, which if you want to take a look, is page 50. So if you look at Gevurot, Gevurot means power. This prayer praises God's power. The first 3 prayers of Tefillah, Avot praises our ancestors, Gevurot praises God's power, and Kedusha praises God's holiness. There are 2 choices here in the prayer, 4 different times. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, you are forever powerful Adonai. Mechaye, you look at the second word there, what do you see? Hakol, and then in parentheses, Meitim. Okay, Mechaye fits both. Mechaye from the root chai, to live, giver of life. Hakol is the newer Reform version. I say newer, but it's about 150 years old in our movement, means who gives life to everything. Mechaye Meitim means who gives life to the dead. That refers to bodily resurrection. Okay? So that is a very serious principle in traditional Judaism that our movement, as I say, mostly rejects, although you are welcome to it because it is part of tradition. But our ancestors who rewrote our liturgy for the Reform movement were uncomfortable with even praying it, Mechaye Meitim, and so changed it to a more generic, who gives life to everything. Okay? Here at Har Zion, predating me, Rabbi Stroh decided to bring back the traditional text, and so even in our old Har Zion prayer book, which we don't use anymore, he brought back Mechaye Meitim, and you can see that our liturgy, the Mishkan Tefillah, now gives congregations the choice. I don't know that many who use Mechaye Meitim. I think we're one of the few that I've ever heard of. But here we are. And for those of you who struggle with liturgy, and I'll add this, and I do sometimes, there are things in the prayer book I have trouble believing, and Mechaye Meitim, as you've heard, is one of them. However, sometimes we have to do a little liturgical gymnastics, us Jews, when we encounter a text that we know what it means, but we don't really believe it, but the whole congregation's going to pray it. So for one thing, I would adjure you not to worry too much about the words. Sometimes it's better just to use them as a mantra, and use them, as Rabbi Heschel would say, to get out of your head and get into your heart. Don't worry so much about it. It's a plague on rabbinic students and Jewish educators. Once we learn enough Hebrew and cantors, all of a sudden we know what we're saying, and we're like, oh, I can't say that anymore. The story is, I'm on a tangent, but the story is when we were living in Israel, we decided to have a Seder, all of us students, and everybody took a piece of the Haggadah to create on their own. So we would have our own little student Haggadah. And by the time all of us who had now all learned Hebrew just got rid of everything we didn't believe in, it was like 8 pages long. So I wouldn't do that way. But sometimes there's a new understanding you can get of a piece of liturgy, and it turns out that the rabbis say in the Talmud that if you see someone you haven't seen in a long time, they say a year or more, who you haven't been in touch with, you say Michayei Hametim, who resurrects the dead, as if they were gone but now they're back. So when I say it, I sometimes think about people who I haven't seen in a long time, and that's how I work. Are there any other questions tonight? I didn't leave a ton of time for off the cuff, but Brina, then Joan.
With the focus with the URJ on expanding the tent and becoming more welcoming to people who are Jewish adjacent in families, when or if, or do you think that we will ever adopt patrilineal descent?
Oh boy, okay. So what Brina asked, if you didn't hear, especially online, is with the URJ's commitment to welcoming everyone and to people who are, as you say, Jewish adjacent, and hospitality and all that, will our movement here in Canada ever adopt patrilineality? The idea that the child of a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother is Jewish, and that's the accepted rule in the US since 1983, although it predates that because a lot of rabbis were doing it anyway, and then the CCAR resolved it. But famously at that conference, and I don't remember where it was because I wasn't a rabbi yet, the Canadian Reform Rabbinate rejected it, and we did it mostly because we're not the largest movement in Canada. We are in the U.S., so kind of in the US, it was easier for us to kind of direct the way things could go, and people would sort of have to either live with it or too bad. Whereas in Canada, we were a little more concerned being a smaller community with Klal Yisrael, with the unity of the people of Israel. However, I do think, and I observed patrilineal descent for people for the first 13 years of my rabbinate, I have a strange feeling it may come up in the next few years. So I don't know where it'll go. As some of you know, the Reform Rabbis of Greater Toronto have a Brit Rabbanim, a covenant between the rabbis where when it comes to Jewish status and life cycle, we sort of come to a consensus together so that we can be a unified group. So if somebody brings it up and enough of us, there's enough of a consensus to say, yeah, maybe it's time, then it'll happen. I would be okay with it. I understand why we don't observe it here, but I also understand that it's sexist. To say that if you're lucky enough to have a Jewish mom and a non-Jewish dad, you win. But if you happen to have a Jewish dad and a non-Jewish mom, you lose and you have to convert, which is fine. We do have a fast track for patrilineal Jews so that the conversion process is a little shorter, but I would be okay if that changed. Joan, I think you get the last one.
I just wanted to know if we could have name tags.
If we could have name tags? Okay, you mean for everybody here? It's been talked about. I will bring it back to the board and see what they think.
And if they could get someone to donate that,
Okay,
I would be pleased to donate.
that's good to know. That might help us to get it done. Thank you, Joan. Brina.
It was on our agenda pre-COVID.
Okay, so,
We had the labels donated, like the plastic things to wear.
uh-huh.
We were on our way.
So there you go.
And
It,
then
well,
life changed.
we have to go back to our pre-COVID agendas and see what we missed. Very good. Thank you. I know there are congregations, huh? Baruch Tieh. I know there are congregations, not just Jewish ones, where all members, there's a big tray of name tags when you walk in, all in alphabetical order, and when you walk in, you take yours. If you're a guest, you make a new one, and that, you're right, everybody knows everybody. I like it. All right. Good stuff, everybody. Let us now turn to the middle of page 282 as we rise for Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach Adon hakol. 25. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Please be seated. Page 289. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled, it burns, it glows, it is radiant with warmth and beauty. But soon it fades, its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance and our lives are full. But as night follows day, the candle of our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal cycle of darkness and death, of light and life. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 294. At this time, our Hartzion family extends its sympathies to our members and their families who have suffered a recent loss. Adele Hyman on the loss of her cousin, Maureen Nathan. Alan and Joan Desso on the loss of their cousins, Sharon and David Nyberg. Jody Bloom on the loss of her mother, Rita Feingold. Perlita Stroh on the loss of her grandmother, Simi Soberano. And Barb Barnard on the loss of her brother, Willie Schnoll. And we remember, too, those whose yahrzeits we observed this week. Jeffrey Ambrose, Hyman Barnett Bach, Libby Benjamin, Simon Saul Berger, Sue Birnbaum, Mo Birnbaum, Irving Chester, Sally Ann Fagan, Albert Finkelstein, Sandra Frisch, Albert Kutcher, Yetta Landau Schinder, Gordon Ludsky, Mildred Massel, Gershon Ovadia, Morris Richmond, Victoria Schlanger, Irving Schendroth, Becky Schulman, Dora Slavner, Miriam Snitzer Kaufman, Rochelle Spearman, Irene Teeger, Manly Tesler, Paul Winston, and Golda Wisleski. And as we do each Shabbat, we remember some of the Jews of our adopted town of Michle, Czech Republic, who perished in the Shoah. Harry Kovanitz, Yindrit Kovanitz, Hilda Kovanitsova, Vitslav Krasa, Yana Krasova, and Kamila Lamplova. If anyone has the name of a loved one for Kaddish that I did not say, please share their name aloud. We ask those observing Shiva, Shloshim, Avelut, the year of mourning, or Yartzeit to please rise. We ask the congregation to rise and join the mourners in love and support. We think too at this time of those members of our armed forces who have died fighting overseas, our brothers and sisters in Eretz Israel who have died in so many wars, and all the innocent people of this world who have lost their lives to violence, conflict, hatred, the chaos of nature, or neglect. As together we pray, Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divarach irutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Osei shalom bimromav hu ya'asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And together we say, Amen. Please be seated. At Temple Har Zion, we acknowledge that we are situated on traditional treaty territories and treaty lands. The territories include the Wendat, Anishinaabeg Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, and the Métis Nation. As Jews and as a community, may we always strive to fulfill our Jewish value of tzedek tirdof, the pursuit of justice in our society. We pray for healing in the communities and families of all who experience residential schools, comfort for all those grieving, and strength for all of us to pursue reconciliation. Amen. I'd like now to call upon Brina Taylor, immediate past president of Temple Har Zion, who has some greetings and announcements. And thank you, Brina, for running the board and ushering tonight as well. There you go.
On behalf of your board of directors, Shabbat Shalom. Morning Minyan services are held via Zoom Sundays at 9 a.m. and Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:15 a.m. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., Torah study with Rabbi Weiss in person or via Zoom. Monday at 10 a.m., yoga with David Kendall at THZ. Fridays at 10 a.m. Today, we had another great time this morning at Shabbat Fun in the Sun. This week, this week we did not braid challahs. This week, we actually made bird feeders out of multigrain Cheerios. Parents and grandparents, if you haven't signed up yet, there's one more Friday for Shabbat in the Sun, and you can still sign up for a free hour of fun in the sun next Friday. Crafts, music, story time in our beautiful garden, and so much more. Rain or shine, as we have an indoor space as well. This is a wonderful opportunity to meet our clergy and other parents in our community. Bring your friends along for this free event. Please register in advance. School registration is open. If you know of someone who is interested in our school, please have them reach out to judy@heartzion.ca. And if you know someone who is supposed to be registered and has yet to, please ask them to do so. We've got a great brand new program for grade 9s this year. For links and other events, please refer to our e-blast or go to heartzion.ca. Check out our Facebook and Instagram pages as well. Welcome to our visitors. If you're interested in learning more about Temple, please see me, Morris Marin, Cantor Littman, or Rabbi Weiss at the end of the service. Please place your prayer book under the chair before you exit the sanctuary. We're not done yet, though. We still have a closing song. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Brina. And let's see. Eleanor, Nasiat Tova, she's off to the boat tomorrow. And next Shabbat, I'll be away also. So it's just Cantor Littman. So please come, please sing, please support her. And tomorrow we'll manage to do Eleanor's job. It takes two of us to do it when you're not here.
And it's still not the same.
It's not the same. So we will conclude this evening singing Osei Shalom, which if you need words is at the very bottom of Kaddish on page 294. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Send emails during service.
Amen.